All right, we're 3 past, so we'll get started. So as it's come up a few times over the last year or so in our meetings, there's been questions about hiring, so we thought we'd get some guests in today. So we have two. Dave Williams is the talent acquisition manager for Simpson, Gummertz and Hager out here in Waltham, Mass. And Jamie Hasty is the vice president of Sesco Management Consultants, and we've seen her before at our meetings at P2 and others, so hopefully we're hoping for a lively discussion. Dave's got a few slides, but we're hoping for a lot of questions and ways that we can help. So Dave, if you want to get started.
Yeah, sure. So thank you everyone for taking some time. I know Alyssa Brownson was supposed to be here, but I'm stepping in. I actually sit within the HR team as well here at SGH. As Norman mentioned, I'm the manager of talent acquisition. So I was just hoping to go through a little bit about us and how we go through our recruitment process and give you a little bit of a sense of what we see in the market as well. A little bit about me. So I started actually in executive search on the agency side. So I worked in agency for about 7 years. And then I transitioned into corporate recruiting. And I've been in corporate recruiting for about 12 years now. I've worked with companies that were as small as 250 people and as large as 75,000 people. Right now at SGH, kind of somewhere in the middle. We're at just about 750 people is a milestone we'll be hitting this summer. But so a little bit about our team. So within talent acquisition, we're currently a team of 4 in total. We're actually adding someone new who's going to be starting at the beginning of June. Again, we support 750 employees at SGH across 9 office locations. The way that we're going to be split when we have this new person join my team is to have one person that supports the East region. And for us, that's New York, Massachusetts, Chicago, DC, and Atlanta. And then we're going to have the other person that'll be supporting the West, which is Houston, and then most everything in California and Denver, which is a new office for us. So different teams are split different ways, but that's just the way that we're split. And then we have one coordinator on our team as well. In terms of like hiring, if you look at like some numbers in terms of our hiring season, it's usually from 1 September through 31 August of each year. And so far this year, we're at 145 new hires. So probably a little bit above where we normally are, but are coming up at the end of our season, we'll probably top 150. If you look at like the percentage of our new hires right now, as you can see, we're 91% technical new hires and only 9% operations. So we're very comfortable in supporting technical staff, something that we're very used to. So I hope that's applicable in terms of our conversation today. A high percentage of the people that we do hire are entry level. They come up from within with a bachelor's, master's, PhD coming out of school. Most of our hiring within structural engineering and our engineering mechanics team actually come out with a master's or a PhD as a prerequisite. We're very active on campuses. We have a partnership with over 40 schools across the U.S. We usually attend about 60 plus career fairs each year. There's blocks in the fall, blocks in the winter. We don't actually attend those as talent acquisition. We actually prep and then we actually debrief technical staff that go and get a chance to meet with the students firsthand, which we found to be successful, and the students feel more comfortable in engaging someone that's either been there or to learn a little bit more about their future within SGH. We also have a really robust internship program. We usually have about 50 technical interns and co-ops throughout the year. Last year, summer class was 42 across all the offices. We're probably going to top that this year, somewhere between 44 and 50, probably somewhere in that ballpark. We recognize the importance of the internship experience. About 3 years ago, our numbers of retention of interns to full-time hire wasn't very good. It wasn't where it should be. It was during COVID, but what we started to do is do some coaching sessions with our mentors, which I definitely recommend if there's an opportunity to coach those that are mentoring or supervising interns to help amplify their experience and hopefully add that opportunity to bring them on full-time. And since that, we've seen our internship retention go up to 74% of full-time eligible interns accepted a full-time position with us. So if you look at a little bit about like our hiring practices, probably similar to most companies. We have like one group, which is like our strategy for entry level or early career hiring, and then another kind of strategy for those that are the mid to senior level hiring. For the most part, for the early entry level hires, technical interns, new hires, graduates, 1 to 2 years experience, somewhere in that ballpark. Majority of the people that we recruit are coming through campus recruiting or the internship pipeline that we have. For us, it's also a really good opportunity to have referrals come from new hires that joined us straight out of school to try to find classmates that they studied with that they could recommend as someone that would fit well within our culture. We also get a lot of hires from our applications, which as you'll see is not quite the case for the mid to senior level. A lot of people show interest in us, which is great. It means a lot of navigating through applications, but we do get a lot of people through our careers page as well as our social channels, primarily Indeed and LinkedIn. And then for the early career level, there's not a lot of direct sourcing that we need to do or direct outreach, mostly because people come to us or we've already found them through our internship program or on campus. Now, the mid-senior level hiring, it's a different animal altogether. And at mid-senior level being anyone that's over 2 years experience up to a principal level for us. A lot of this is focused on sourcing or direct outreach. We use a tool, LinkedIn. It's a way to engage with people. We actually have a little bit of investment in LinkedIn, a tool called LinkedIn Recruiter that allows us to engage individuals that may not necessarily be looking and see if there's interest in potentially starting a conversation with SGH. Again, we can't depend on applicants for this. For jobs that we have posted at the mid or senior level, it's rare that we'll get over 10 people that'll apply, just because most everyone's gainfully employed and not necessarily looking, which is where that sourcing aspect is important to us. At this level, we really push our referral program, which I'll touch on a little bit later as well, to really target maybe former colleagues or even classmates from years ago. We're actually within the next week or two going to be announcing an increase in our bonuses that we provide for our referral program as well, which I think speaks to the need at this level. And we also encourage our staff to be involved in network at industry events to help promote SGH. When we're not boots on the ground, having people at those events, which are kind of our target audience, we really hope to encourage those to attend and promote us. Some of the tools and resources, which is pretty similar to probably most companies. We have an applicant tracking system. We use something called Greenhouse software. Prior to this, we never had anything. So when I joined in 2020, this was a big implementation that's been very successful throughout the company. And this is essentially a way for applicants to apply, and then for us internally to manage the candidates and the positions. We actually share the responsibility with our hiring team, so it's kind of like a nice balance. A lot of companies or companies I've worked at before, it's really just the talent acquisition team or HR that manages it. But I'd recommend if you ever get a chance to say, hey, can we partake in looking at the candidates through the applicant tracking system? It's really helpful from my perspective. As I'd mentioned, we have a referral program as a major tool for us. It's a tiered referral program, so we have one tier that's at like kind of the entry level, and then we have more that's at that mid-senior level. And again, we're adding more money to those to hopefully increase our number of referrals. We get the majority of our referrals are at the more junior entry level, so we're really looking to increase that number hopefully for the mid to senior level. And if you talk to anyone that's a recruiter or in talent acquisition or HR, they'll tell you those are where the best new hires come from, which is why we really promote it and push as much as we do. Usually you're going to find the best long-term fits from people that are in your organization, that know your organization, that have people that they would recommend that would be successful in your organization. Also, we rely a lot on our internship pipeline. For us, it's the best way to get people early and interested in SGH before they have options, because once they go back to school and they don't really have a tie to your school, they're going to have all different types of options to select from. But for us, it's also helpful because we have someone that's been with us over the summer, maybe once or twice or even 3 times, that's almost had like a working interview with us. We've seen how they perform, we see if they would fit well. And also for them, they get a chance to see our company and see if it would be a good opportunity for them. And then also beyond our career fairs, which is a great way to promote our company, We also have really good partnerships with the student organizations and the faculty at the schools, which is really helpful to be able to draw their best talent if we have those relationships. And as I've mentioned, LinkedIn Recruiter and Indeed are the tools that we use primarily specific to recruiting and helping us to kind of promote specific jobs and then again source mid-level talent as well. So from like a hiring trend standpoint, I wanted to kind of point out some of what we've seen at least. I think in terms of engineering unemployment, again, I can't say the specific exact numbers, but very low. There's I would say less than 2%, if not less than 1% of unemployment within engineering. There's many reasons that point to this, but what we've seen a lot is smaller class sizes in schools, less people to select from. So the supply and demand, there's literally more jobs than there are people to fill them. So less students, and every time we get to a point where we're providing an offer to a student, they have multiple offers, 3, 4, 5 sometimes, and they ultimately have to select the one that they like the most. Also, we've seen a lot of reduction in force in other companies, a lot of technical companies, companies across the US, unfortunately, but most of the people that are impacted are not specifically within engineering. In terms of another trend that we've seen is people staying at their companies right now. Uncertain future right now of the climate of where we stand. And I think people are kind of hanging tight with where they are for the time being. Also, we've seen a lot of increase in terms of compensation. The supply and demand, again, less people means the more requests for higher compensation. For us as a company, we've recognized this over the last 3 years. We've actually provided an increase in the starting rate for our entry-level hires as well as our interns. So that's something that we had done traditionally, I'd say every 2 years, is recognize the market and make an adjustment. Whereas now we've been doing it each of the last 3 years to try to keep up. Something else that we do provide as well as a sign-on bonus, whether it's an entry-level hire or it's an intern, we provide them with a bonus once they sign the offer letter. And we've increased that rate as well this past year. Also, we've seen a lot more interest in remote work. For us as SGH before COVID, we were pretty much 100% everyone's in the office. We had some people that even left the company prior because they wanted to work remote, but we were always in office for good reason. But then once we went through COVID, we realized that we can work in a more flexible work environment, which is how we operate now. But I think a lot of people realized in different companies, different industries, that they could work fully remote and be successful. So that's now a request, and in some cases a requirement for someone if you want to hire them. Being that compensation is going up and there's only so much you can do from a compression standpoint, from a budget standpoint, something that we do that I think others should do is react with a focus on your benefits as well. A lot of companies have turned to different benefits outside of salary, like unlimited time off. You'll hear of companies that take, and some of you may, where they take long time periods off at the end of the year. Like a lot of them take like the week after Christmas off, like things that they can do outside of just salary. For us, we really have a robust total rewards package. So we have a profit sharing program, which averages about 15% per year for a 401k program. So that's something that stands out for us relative to others. We've also added a new holiday this past year for Juneteenth. And then also we increased the amount that we provide for continuing education within SGH this past year. And then so I just want to offer some best practices beyond a little bit of what I've already talked to, but some other things as well. In terms of like recruitment, I always say it's like a team effort. You know, I'd say for you, engage your staff to participate in the recruiting efforts, you know, at events, via social media, and via social media, I mean like a LinkedIn. We really encourage a lot of our teams to use LinkedIn to post jobs to go out to their network. We actually have like a template that people can follow. It's pretty straightforward, but the interaction within your networks is going to be far more impactful than what we could ever do. People that you know, that you see, that see your profile, that see your job, will hopefully attract people to the positions that you may have. And I always say it's okay to be proud of your company and show that when you're talking to other people. Sometimes people are not as boisterous and not as appreciative of their company where they really are, but it's okay to share that, especially when you're interacting and networking with people. I always say communicate with your talent acquisition team. If you have one or if you have HR, I could say like from my standpoint, everywhere I've always been, we're always ready and excited to help. You know, we want to find people, we want to be a good partner. So I'd always say instead of just kind of doing it on your own and hoping it works, you know, reach out to those that are there to help you. We can also, on the talent acquisition side, something that we can help out with that maybe on the technical side, sometimes you don't always tackle is compensation, detailing the benefits, career development, and just promoting the company as a whole. Sometimes like we can give a holistic picture of the whole company as opposed to maybe just your group. And we really are there to help sell the company too, just as you are. And then also another thing we do is we help coach through interview processes. Sometimes we have a lot of new people that come to the company that have never gone through an interview process or need some interview coaching. That's something else that hopefully if you have an HR department or talent acquisition that they can help out with as well. Like I said, highlight that referral program. I put it here. If you don't have one, communicate with HR and get one. You really do. It's well worth the money that you invest in whatever you can provide. But it's like I said, if you were to talk to anyone in what I do, that's what they'll tell you is the best hires come through that platform. And I always say, you know, if you have a referral program, it's good, but discuss it within your staff. Talk to your team about it. Let them know what it is and the impact it'll have. I often join meetings here within our technical divisions to kind of start promoting this even that much more to let people know it's okay to share your referrals and you get paid for it. You know, so one email or one communication can get you $5,000-$10,000. So always point that out. Another thing I would say is just in ways to build your talent pipeline. I know I talked about interns a little bit. I think that's one area that's a really great opportunity. They can provide support now and learn and on their side and hopefully be a full-time hire for you in the future. If you do hire interns, I would say maximize their experience. That was one of the challenges we had a couple of years back is we would have interns, but it would be like just cattle. Like they would pull this person and be like, go on this project or you go and do this. And the feedback we received is that it wasn't like they were having a good experience and they didn't get a chance to see all their opportunities. So if you do have them, give them a good experience. And I always promote the opportunity for them to provide a presentation at the end of their time. Some do require that based on their schools, but I think it also helps them to focus on their time, their work, and help remember their experience a little bit more as well. Leverage schools that you work with. If you do work with schools, leverage where you went to school, leverage where your team went to school. We really encourage speaking engagements. If there's an opportunity to be connected with the students, a lot of the people that we've hired have said, oh, I remember Phil when you came and you had a conversation with our class and I learned something about a group I never would have known unless you came and spoke to us. So that's very impactful. And then if you ever have an opportunity to host a school or a networking event, it's nice to show people who you are and where you work. And that's what I've got. I'll take myself off sharing here too.
Anybody have questions before we pick Jamie's brain?
Feel free to add any questions in the chat as we go through this, folks. Myself and Bob will facilitate that for you, Norm. But if anybody has a question now, feel free to unmute and ask it.
And I'll be sending this afterwards for everyone too.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that kind of makes me feel good that we're doing a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing. And I actually picked out a few ideas from what you just presented that we don't do. So appreciate that.
Good. You're welcome.
Dave, I was just wondering, your previous firms, were they bigger, smaller? What was the differences or challenges or advantages between the size of the companies? Does it make much difference?
Yeah, so I everywhere I've gone, I've always had that referral program. At the smaller company, I actually had to start it, which was difficult. I'd say that the difference for me is how closely connected you are to the people that you hire. Because if you really enjoy talent acquisition and what like I do, if you get too big, you kind of lose touch with the people that you hired. So I think for me, on the much larger company, it was a $3 billion company. So you hire someone and then they kind of just go off into their own place and you don't really see them. Whereas still at about 750 for us, we still get that, which I think is important. And you still get that connection with those people as they continue their career growth. So from a recruitment standpoint, certainly there's a volume difference, but that's at least for me, like the difference that I see.
So I think for those of us on the call, I think we have, if I've got the firms correct, Norm, SGH, you guys are the biggest firm on the call. I think you said, Dave, 750 some odd employees. Is that right?
Yep, we're about to hit that over the summer.
Okay. And then Scott, you guys are in New York with 300 some odd employees.
Yep.
And then we're in Ohio with roughly 120 employees with a few employees in Illinois. And then Tim, you guys are in Michigan. How many employees you guys have?
About the same, 120 or so.
Okay. Anybody else want to pipe in? I know I see Rebecca Smith on the call. You guys are out west.
I'm Rebecca Thompson with BSK, and we're in California. We have about 200.
Hi, this is Alex Tarleton from Eurofins Environment Testing. We have about 3,000 employees in the US.
Okay, winner, chicken dinner.
Dave, I know we've had quite a few meetings internally about non-US citizens. Is there anything you want to share with everybody? I'm not sure how much people are doing with that as far as support or hiring, but anything you want to say, Dave, about that, or willing to share about what we've been talking about?
Yeah, so for me, we in my last two companies, we didn't provide sponsorship support. A lot of companies don't. We do. It is complicated. I guess that's probably the best way to say it. Sometimes I think for us, the challenge is the person and the talent based on the work that we do is it's attractive to the people that are hiring for the position, and so they want to take that leap. But I would say that it is, and we go to a lot of events where the companies are very clear in that they don't support hiring people with visas or providing sponsorship. But we do. But like I said, it is complicated. That's the best way I would put it. We do have really good hires from it, but for us, it also then requires a third-party support from a legal standpoint. That is an additional cost beyond what we have to provide for them.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah. Jamie, what are your thoughts?
Wow. So first and foremost, Dave, thank you so much. What a great presentation. And I would mirror Scott's comments. My HR hat is very happy to see all of that because it's best practice. It's right in line with what a larger organization should really be focusing on. And I know we've got kind of a mismatch of sizes of organizations. So Rebecca out of Pickering in California, of course, they're on a completely different scale than, some of the other folks. So yeah, I mean, I love applicant tracking systems, whether that is the system that you all referenced, Dave, or any of your payroll systems. True, if you're using Bamboo, if you're using ADP, if you're using Paylocity, a lot of them will sink in. And it is a nice, seamless process. I heard so many amazing things that I would 100% agree with. Referral bonuses, signing bonuses. Now, from a compliance side of things, I mean, certainly we could talk more about the implications from a wage and hour perspective, both for the referral as well as the signing bonus, because that does get a little tricky when we're talking about FLSA. Especially if I have somebody that is not exempt from overtime, that referral bonus, if it is tied into, Dave, I referred Dave in, Dave got hired in a professional capacity, Dave's exempt. So it doesn't matter his signing bonus, but I'm an hourly person, and I'm eligible for overtime. But in order for me to get my referral bonus, Dave has to stay at least 6 months. Well, now I've got a non-discretionary bonus situation that I have to include for purposes of overtime. So there are some of those nuances that we run into when we're talking about employment law compliance. Something that I do a lot with signing bonuses for clients nationwide. And again, the signing bonus can look a variety of ways. It's got to be affordable, but it's got to be meaningful to the candidate. So, if we're going to say, oh, we'll give you $1,000 signing bonus, it may not be meaningful to that person. Now, does that mean that we can afford a $10,000 signing bonus? I don't know. It's going to be based on our, budget and our affordability and geographic region and the position that we're hiring for and all of the things, right? But what a lot of organizations are doing across various industries is they are doing a percentage up front and then spreading out the remainder of that signing bonus over, say, 6 months, end of year, to help kind of keep that retention piece as well. Enough to get them in the door, but then kind of incentivize them to stay. Because to Dave's point, the market is so hot, and there is a supply and demand issue. I have seen clients burned by bringing in new hires, giving them a very generous signing bonus because they're qualified, they were a good fit, we wanted them, only to have them jump ship 6 months later. So something to think about. You don't have to tie it or spread it out that way, but that's something to think about. I love the references to internships, paid internships, strategic alliances with your schools and colleges within the school. That is so impactful. If you can get them early, it's the best thing that we can do. So that's wonderful. I will say let's talk a little bit about interviewing. So what we have seen from an interviewing, and Dave, I'd love to hear your feedback or perspective on this as well, is time is of the essence. So, traditionally we'd post a job, we'd look at candidates once a week, twice a week, maybe leave it open for 20 days before we start fielding candidates. You got to do that in real time on a daily basis, because within 10 days, generally, the majority of your applicants are already gone. They've got offers elsewhere, they're further down along in the process. So, you really have to be fielding those as quickly as possible. And I know that can be daunting, especially for some of our smaller members who HR or the COO is the one handling all of the recruitment. But we've got to be quicker about it. The other thing is people are moving away from long interviews. We're seeing more initial telephone interview, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. A secondary follow-up interview, 30 minutes max, 2 days later. I mean, it is rapid fire. If you can interview and screen these pools of individuals and get an offer within 7 days, that's your target. Because again, it goes back to statistical data and studies done by a variety of organizations across all industries where they're looking for an offer within, that 10 to 14 day period. Because again, they've got 4 other offers in front of them. So, Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%.
In your experience.
Yeah, 100%. That's accurate, especially in the engineering field. If they're interviewing with you and they're not employed or on their way out for some reason, they're interviewing elsewhere. And for us, we do a really good job, I think, across the board in terms of our interviews. We don't extend the interviews too long. For the most part, we'll do typically like that first screening will be Zoom. It's interesting, via COVID, we've kind of shifted pretty much away from like phone screens to start with. A lot of
Yeah.
those first screens are more Zoom conversations and almost like a Bizarro first interview, what it used to be. And sometimes we'll do quizzes. Some groups will do like a quiz, like a technical quiz. But for the most part, it's kind of like that first introductory call with one or two people from the team. And then we really do get everything into that almost like just final interview. It's like a 1 day in person, try to meet with as many people as you can on the team, but time is of the essence for sure. You really have to move quick. I think there's a tendency sometimes for people to say, well, I want to have like 3 people to compare and determine which one's the best. Well, you may not even get to 2. So if you see someone you like, jump on them for sure.
Yeah.
Because they will have options. So 100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that applicant tracking system, having something like that, even if it's on a smaller scale, is really beneficial because you can have other managers looking at interviews, you can add notes in, you can generate your employment offers, your background, all of that can be automated, which a lot of our younger workforce is looking for that technology aspect as well. The simpler and easier it is for them to complete onboarding, new hire paperwork, the happier they are, because really the candidate experience starts from that initial screen, whether that is Zoom, telephone, in person. You got to do what works for your culture and your organization and your area, right? So the candidate experience matters. The feel that they get for you within the first few minutes matters. Making sure that we have a good brand, we're presenting ourselves well. Any managers that we are bringing into the process are well versed in kind of what I call the line of sight of the organization. Yes, the obvious reasons for the products and services that we offer, but what else makes our organization special? Are we involved in community events? Are we involved in continuing education? Are we involved in career growth and development? Kind of the not so obvious reasons why we're a great organization to work for and why we exist should be part of the sell, right? Yes, pay, benefits, all of that stuff. Talk about that up front. I do not personally, in my 17, 18 years with Sesco, recommend and or do myself when I'm recruiting for professional level positions. That's one of the first things that I talk about. Now, obviously we have to be careful with wage transparency laws, asking salary history, depending on states in which you may operate in. I mean, there's a whole legal side of things there, but candidates now want to see in your job posting what the range is. Most of them will pay attention to that. There will still be those who don't, and they'll throw out an outrageous number, and you're like, well, that doesn't align with our hiring range, and that's okay. But the reason why I want to talk about it up front is because time is of the essence. I want to be respectful of their time as well as mine. And if it's not going to work and align within their expectations or our expectations and affordability, let's move on. No harm, no foul. So I think having those conversations early in the process can be very beneficial so that everybody is on the same page. I've seen too many situations where we fall in love with a person and to only have that conversation about money on the back end, and we can't come to some sort of reasonable solution. And then we walk away from that conversation feeling frustrated. They may have a bad taste in their mouth. That can impact how they are communicating about their experience, our company, our screening processes to others within the industry, and that can harm us moving forward as well. So, really kind of think about those things. To Dave's point, yes, money is important, but money is not always the full driver, right? So where do we as an organization provide benefit? Is it remote work? Is it flexible work? Is it unlimited PTO? I mean, that goes back to like 2013, 2012, big old trend on the West Coast, and now it's trickled. I mean, there obviously is also that push for the 32-hour work week. I mean, legislatively, that has not passed on a federal basis or on a state basis, but I have organizations that are really maintaining current pay structure, current pay rates, and they're saying, look, we're going down to 32 hours. Does that work for everybody? No, it does not. But you have to look at what else do we bring to the table that may be valuable to them. And that's going to be different depending on where they're at in their career phase and personal life phase as well. So, car allowances, cell phone reimbursement. If I'm working from home, depending on the state that I am working from home in, we may have to pay for their internet and cell phone. So, always make sure that we're double checking those pieces before we go down a path of saying, oh, sure, we'll let you work from home. Well, if we're in California, you got to pay for that stuff. So, there's a lot that's going on there. Certainly, I still always recommend doing our pre-employment checks. References, we could debate back and forth all day long. At the very least, verify employment if they've worked other places. Did they actually hold that title? And are they eligible for rehire? Professional references or much more detail outside of that is becoming increasingly more difficult for a variety of confidentiality reasons and fear for civil litigation. But, technical, Dave mentioned technical quizzes. Certainly, absolutely, you can do that. Be mindful of the Department of Labor EEOC stance on how and when those pre-employment tests should be administered, because they can create disparate impact if they are created internally and we are not using a quiz or a test that has not been statistically validated and is considered reliable. Because I could pull 10 different court cases in the last year where employers have gotten dinged on issuing their own internal quizzes or tests, and there's no validity or reliability there, and it unfortunately did create disparate impact and treatment of minority individuals. Drug testing, still a big deal. You should do it. I know the marijuana piece, obviously, depending on states, can get a little tricky with recreational versus medicinal versus a medical marijuana card versus no card at all, so we still need to be mindful of that. But do your checks. I know that slows the process down, but it's really, really important to do that from a protection standpoint. It's best practice HR even in 2024. Interviewing, behavioral-based questions. We got to ask the right questions. Managers need to be trained on how to interview. Okay, it is an art. It is an art to read between the lines and probe and make sure we're asking good examples and bad examples so we don't get rater error or bias. So, good job descriptions in place. That's a good recruitment tool as well, a good onboarding tool as well. And just making sure that every candidate that we do interview for that particular position is getting the exact same question. That allows us to compare, if we have a pool large enough, apples to apples. But, I think Dave has a really, really great point about if we don't have 3 or 4 to compare, it's okay. If you like them and they are giving us the information that is hitting all of the marks, make moves. Don't sit on it hoping that we'll get 2 more behind it in 2 weeks, because they're going to be gone. So otherwise, I mean, Dave really did cover so much, which I think is amazing. So I don't really have a whole lot to add to it, but I think, you know, you got to just challenge out what's working for us for our particular organization, and where could we take some of this information from today's meeting and weave it into our current process. Are there any questions that anybody may have for me? Be happy to answer. I do see some comments in the chat while people may be thinking about that. The H-1B visas and other J-1 visas, very expensive, very time consuming, can get a little complex, especially when it comes to renewal time as well. You know, getting them in is one thing, but then the renewal and that reapplication process and can be quite daunting. Not that it's a bad thing, but I will say Department of Labor and the Department of Justice has really kind of cracked down a little bit too on how many they're issuing. So questions, thoughts, comments for me or Dave, or just in general? I'd love to hear from the rest of the group. Things that are working for you all or you're frustrated with, and, you know, can we talk about it as a team? Because I think there's a lot of people on this call and everybody is going to have their own experiences and feedback. And that's what I love about these opportunities, is we can learn so much from each other.
Hey, Jamie and Norm and Dave, there's a question that ties into what you just said, Jamie, about any pain points in the chat. It looks like we got a few HR construction materials testing HR representatives on the call. Maybe hear from them it'd be interesting to hear any current pain points relative to recruiting for them, and specifically in that space, if anybody's willing to share. Not picking on any names, but Jessica, Marianne, Lauren, anybody want to jump in with anything?
Y'all under the bus.
Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I just real quick, I would say it sounds like there's some smaller companies, and a lot of what we do, that even though we're 750 or so, a lot of what we do you can do as a smaller company as well. Like LinkedIn is completely free. What you do in sharing with your network, it's free, but it will make an impact. If you're looking to find a certain position, it will get to those networks, the people that, even if you don't have HR, even if you don't have a robust applicant tracking system, it's a free tool. It's going to get you good, better talent than just a job posting will get you anyway.
Thank
and
you.
then, like, in regards to like the interview aspect, with what Jamie said, you definitely want to get motivations from someone on the front end. Someone can be money motivated, someone can be motivated because of their current position and something that you can offer them. We just talked to someone who is fully remote, and they've been fully remote for 3 years, and they just don't like being remote, and they want to be in the office, and money wasn't as big a deal to them. So it's good to ask that on the front end to understand where their motivations are. But the other thing I would say with the interviews is, whoever's involved in your interviews, I would kind of assign responsibilities to them before you talk to the person, because they're interviewing you just like you're interviewing them. And so that way you can kind of distribute who asks specific questions based on, you know, what you're looking to learn, as opposed to everyone asking the same exact question and not getting a good view, an overall view of the person.
Thanks, Dave. Marianne, I know you were going to say something, and I think Jessica unmuted too. So Marianne first, and then Jessica. Marianne, we can't hear you. You're saying you're unmuted, but your audio is not working. No. Let's go to, whilst you're trying to work out your audio, Jessica, you want to jump in?
Sure. Really, first of all, thank you for this presentation. It's been very informative, and as someone had mentioned earlier, it feels good to hear that some of the things we're doing internally are things that you're also doing. Pain points for us, senior level engineers and those higher level hires, professional level hires. And then occasionally we struggle a bit around larger cities, hiring are more technician type roles. So yeah, those are kind of the two that stand out to me.
Thank you. I'm still working with Marianne here on her. It looks like her microphone output isn't in. Did anybody else have something else they wanted to add?
One thing I was going to mention was the upfront conversations. It was drilled into me 25 years plus ago when I was getting out of school that you didn't talk about those things up front. So I'm still shocked when somebody within 10 minutes says to me, you know, well, what's the flexibility in the hours? And I think, well, I don't even know who you are. Like, you know, that it's sort of an earned thing. So it's interesting to think that we need to think that way and we got to accept it.
I appreciate that feedback because you're right. I mean, historically, it was saved for later on in the process. I think even prior to COVID, when the economy was so good and the market got so hot, people had to shift. I think also from a generational perspective, not to go too far off on a whole different topic of conversation, but it's relevant to this. Our older generation probably is conditioned to wait to have those conversations, whereas your millennials and below that's their first focus. Especially because of student loan debt and cost of living and all of these other things. They want to know money, pay, benefits, flexibility, what's in it for me, for a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's a complete shift in what we've heard in the past and what we've probably done in the past, but it's kind of not going to go anywhere moving forward.
Yeah. If I could speak for Mary Ann a little bit, I think some of the pain positions we've had difficulty trying to fill have been positions like field technicians, lab technicians, positions that you would ordinarily not expect a whole lot of prior training for, but you know they're positions that you would teach the skills on the job. So you're basically looking for people who just are trainable, have general physical ability, and you teach them the job because it's, you know, a lot of it's a certain amount of physical labor, and you just cannot find individuals to do that sort of work, to go out in the field and test concrete and work on construction sites and do work that's semi-physical labor and inspection on construction sites. It's been almost impossible for the past 3 years to find individuals to do that. And I know there's somewhat of a generational shift, and a lot of young men are leaving the workforce. But that's been one of the positions that's been really difficult for us to fill. Finding certain.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, Marianne, we can hear you. Yeah, Rick's just finishing.
I'll let you follow up then. Go ahead, Marianne. Take over.
Yeah, I mean, on a couple of different fronts. We are about 120 employees with an HR department of 1, so spread a little thin. Try and getting through the process as quickly as possible. We run into that, well, I kind of like this person, but I'd like to talk to 2 or 3 or 4 more, which then backs the whole thing up, right? And so it's the kind of, I think, that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that maybe there's somebody better out there that we face. I think compensation, we run up against that a bit. You know, well, we've always paid this role at this amount. Why should we, you know, try and increase it then? And, you know, in a smaller company, our margins are much slimmer. And so when people are managing budgets in a smaller company, we're running up against that profitability versus expensive talent. And so, you know, that simply is what it is. So the speed at which we can get turnaround, and even things like, you know, adding in time to get things through the entire system, can is a challenge for us. Particularly, I think the original question was in the lab kind of roles and things like that, because they require less training, less education, and even bringing in summer interns that desire, well, they're only going to be here for the summer. We can't use them as much as we would a regular employee, so I want to pay them a lot less. Well, their expectations are still the same as that other employee, and that makes it more challenging to get somebody in the door, because it simply is what it is. If they're working next to somebody who starts on the same day they are, and they're making X amount less, we've got a challenging situation that we can certainly talk to on our end as a business. Well, here's why. But on that front end, getting people in the door and keeping them interested in this simply makes it more challenging. Folks, responding in a timely basis, kind of keeping that thing rolling. I have an opening right now, just anecdotal, that I'm not even interviewing people for, because I can't get a commitment from the manager on, if I talk to somebody today, what's yours that I like and that I think you will like? What is your timeline? Well, this person's out, that person's out, maybe the end of May, so I'm not even talking to anybody, because I know that has to go so quickly that knowing somebody's not going to be able to talk to them for another 21 days, it doesn't make sense for that to be where I'm putting my attention. And in terms of, if you all have some magic sauce for hiring a civil engineer at any level right now, please share, because we've used recruiters. Everybody literally that's either applied or has come through a recruiter requires sponsorship either now or in the future. Every single one. And I did immigration HR for many years with a very, very large company. I know how expensive, how time consuming, how much that is. That's not something, again, as a smaller employee, we can support. So I am open to any ideas that you have. We've got 2 openings, a senior and a more junior, and even with reaching out to colleges and being on Handshake and being on College Recruiting Network and doing all of that, it's just impossible. So timing, absolutely, Jamie, you're 100% right in that timing and keeping things going. Once it's out of my hands and into somebody else's. Compensation, it's hard to say. We can't pay what we paid maybe even 2 years ago. Even if we're a smaller company and we're dealing with smaller margins, expectations are different than what they were, even in the lab. And then for our more senior roles, that sponsorship issue for engineers, when there are so very few out there, those are our 3 biggest issues, I think, right now that we're dealing with. But we are doing a lot of the things, Dave, that you talked about. We've got a really robust employee referral program. I post things on LinkedIn, and I encourage the leaders to post things on LinkedIn and let people know. And our marketing person posts our open jobs, both on our Instagram and on our LinkedIn and on our everything for our company. So we're doing a lot of those things, and glad to hear we're on track with that. It's just kind of these other things that are getting in the way.
Yep.
Marianne, I'd like to touch on a couple of things you just talked about. One, for lab staff. I mean, we don't consider lab staff any different than field staff. We hire them at the same wage because they all need to be certified, and the data that they produce actually is even a little more challenging than field staff. So we want to make sure that they have the right ethics and that they're going to produce the quality data that we expect from our field staff. And then you'll find that when you have lab staff, you can actually use them for a lot more than just testing. There'll be other things that lab staff can do to help fill voids and everything once they're on board. And then the other thing about not knowing when to hire somebody, we've changed our philosophy to, okay, we have an opportunity hire here. Whether we absolutely need that person or we may need that person, we go ahead and hire, because there's always attrition. There's always something that's going to happen where you're going to find out that, all right, you made that opportunity to hire, that person works out really well, and it really picked up the slack somewhere else along the way?
We do hire our lab and field staff at the same rate.
Okay.
It's just that that rate hasn't necessarily kept up with market expectations. Whether or not those expectations of those candidates are appropriate. I was looking through, some of the applicants we've got out here, and even, we put the number out there because I know they're far more likely to apply if you put your range in the posting than if you don't. Even with it says X to Y, and they're in there putting Z, which is, $7 an
Right.
hour over our upper limit, which, that's kind of crazy, and I wouldn't even pursue that. But more often than not, what they're asking for is higher than what we are in a point to offer.
Mhm.
That is the tougher part, though. You're going with what the market will bear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so compensation is a tricky thing. So, I mean, obviously the market can drive whatever the market drives, but we also have the internal value that the position holds to the organization. And then we have our ability to pay. It's kind of what we put in a triangle. It's called the right price theory, right? So the other thing that I think is also really important, whether it's in their recruitment piece or once they are actually in the door, and Scott kind of brought this up, as did Richard, is the training aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Training and development, career pathing, career progression is really, really important from a recruitment standpoint and being able to sell how we're going to provide this training, but also for long-term retention. Now, on the flip side,
I agree.
Our hiring managers and HR are faced currently with a lot of frustrations and challenges as it pertains to accountability and competencies. And, following up in a professional manner or, doing what we say we're going to do. I could spend probably 3 separate hours talking about that and how if you are 25 and under, that is a direct impact of COVID because of virtual schools, flexibility on deadlines, not having to turn things in on time, whether they're in high school or college. So you've got the formative years of young adulthood now coming into a formal full-time job, and they're like, well, what do you mean I can't turn this in late? Or you need this report? Yeah, I know, but I'll get it to you on Monday. Why is there a repercussion there? Well, because they've always had that flexibility from high school and college. So whether we agree with that or not, those things are coming. And as an organization, we need to prepare for how are we going to train and educate our managers when those situations arise, how to appropriately address it, and more important, what is our internal goals, expectations, training programs to help kind of get them those skill sets that they may not have because of, unfortunately, their generation. I look at my own kids and, the time management skills and what they learned in school compared to what I learned in school at their age for time management skills. And I think there is a gap, again, whether we agree with it or not, but it's something that we have to focus on because that will be a pain point from a retention perspective.
I see we're a couple minutes past. That's a good sign. Glad we had some interaction. If people want to keep going, I got a message from Bob that says we can, but I want to respect everybody's time too. Big thanks to Jamie and Dave for taking the hour to join us, and the other folks that I don't usually see at the meetings. Thanks for coming in and giving us some input.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for Jamie and Dave. That was a good presentation and good discussion. Norm, thanks for arranging this too.
No problem.
Very much so. And we are we've recorded it, so we'll get it up on the website too, so we can push it out again. But this is again, this originally was a construction materials testing section call, but the topic was so good and well received, we opened it up to everybody. So this is another example of all the sections working together. So thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thanks to all our guests.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.